Okay, and I just want to finish like kind of this talk on if right now you could build your dream bike. So without naming any brand of frames or suspension or whatever, I'll ask you some questions. So the frame you said 475. So like, let's assume it's a trail bike or enduro bike, a bike that you're gonna pedal.
Yeah.
The bike that you ride most of the time. That can do pretty much everything you want it to do. It's not a downhill bike. It's not any bike, obviously. So how much travel are we looking at?
170 fork, 165 rear.
Okay. What wheel setup? 29 mullet?
Just for fun riding, I would go with the mullet.
Okay.
If I was racing enduro, 100% it'd be 29.
Okay. You find it this much quicker?
Yeah, much quicker. Even more, like you can get a shorter chainstay. I find I can ride a bike with dual 29 and almost get the same, if not more, stability with those big wheels and a shorter chainstay.
Yeah.
Than an MX setup.
Okay.
You get more traction, more stability, and just rolls over stuff. So ultimately, for enduro racing, you go faster and you feel less, so you're less tired.
Yeah. Yeah, and like carrying speed is a big one for me.
Yeah.
I feel like it's quite noticeable how much more speed you carry on a 29 setup versus a mullet.
Yeah.
So frame, carbon or aluminum? Or something else?
I mean, I would go carbon if I could, because it's a bit lighter and you can tune the stiffness maybe a bit easier. But there are plenty of good aluminum frames, and even like the same iteration of that bike in aluminum versus carbon that work great. So I'm not too partial to that.
Okay. Now moving to suspension. So sorry, before suspension, ideal geometry. So you say 475.
Yeah.
What will be your head tube angle?
Like 63.5.
Okay. Chainstays length.
445. 450 is okay with the mullet. It's getting out there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
For the geometry, I mean, wheelbase obviously is dependent on
all those three things.
All those three things, but that will be what, like 1275?
Yeah, I think around there. Getting over 1280 for me is like that Orbea. I'm thinking Santa Cruz Nomad versus Orbea Rayon.
Okay.
Like those two bikes definitely stand out in my mind.
Okay.
And then the Trek Slash also enters the picture. And they're like 3 on the top of my list, I would say.
So then, rear shock, do you go coil or do you go air shock?
I mean, that depends on the suspension.
Okay, so what suspension design would you pick?
Yeah, I would previously would have said the VPP on the Nomad, but I think I've become less partial to some things I haven't liked in the past on like a standard FSR, or I guess the Orbea is like a single pivot linkage driven shock. But I think maybe air just out of convenience and the ability to tune the progression. Like if you're riding with a pack one day, or even doing like an easier ride or hitting jumps, like it's pretty easy to tweak that.
It's pretty easy, yeah.
Yeah, but I think there are certain suspension designs that work best with a coil shock, and maybe even vice versa.
Yeah. Okay, now moving down to something cranks.
Yeah.
What crank length would you get? Because nowadays you can choose pretty much anything.
Yeah. I think 165 is pretty comfy. Yeah. I mean, it depends on, sort of BB drop, how much sag you're running, how much travel you have. But I think 165 for an enduro bike is pretty comfy.
Yeah, because you have to pedal it, right? So
yeah,
I've never gone like extreme, but I have 160 on the e-bike. On some of the e-bikes, 165 on an e-bike I pedal, and 160 on a downhill bike. I really like 160 on a downhill bike, but I don't feel the need to go shorter than this.
What do you find that the short cranks do on a downhill bike? Because it's only like, a centimeter if you're going from 165 to 160 that you're bringing your
less pedal hit, less likely to hit the ground. even though it's 5
When you're
millimeter.
pedaling or not pedaling?
Not like sometime when you pedal, like, you know, sometimes you throw like a couple of like pedal stroke, but even just like, because when you ride and when you take impact, you tend to drop your rear foot, right?
Yeah.
So your rear foot drops and gets closer to the ground. So, but
Oh
then,
man, I remember riding that Commensal Supreme at our field test a couple of years ago, and that has 220 miles of travel. And I came down that like last sort of pitch on Detroit Rock City, and I never hit my foot off the ground so fucking hard. I thought I broke my heel. Like I just plowed the bike into this braking bump, and my feet were level.
Just like
where I thought they were, but like, yeah, you do tend to ride with your foot down a bit more. And
no, like anytime you slow motion, you see like the rear foot.
Yeah.
The rear foot like drops.
Yeah.
So handlebar height on that bike, what would you get?
Talking like spacers and everything too, or
no, just like the rise.
35 seems pretty comfy.
Stem length?
Yeah, I like 35, but if 40 was on there, I wouldn't be mad.
Okay. And length of the bars?
770.
770.
I'd maybe go narrower if I was racing enduro though, like you talked about, tight trees and corners and stuff. Yeah, I think the maneuverability of the bike comes into play more than stability necessarily.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wheels, would you go aluminum or carbon?
That's a tough one.
Like thinking also as a customer point of view with like, you know, like do you want to spend time to like readjust your spoke tension? And
yeah, I think for most riders, a more compliant set of carbon rims is a decent investment because you can carry them from bike to bike, and a lot of brands offer a no questions asked lifetime warranty, and they don't require the same amount of attention to keep the spokes true and the wheel centered or true. So yeah, I think carbon definitely has its benefits there. Yeah, that's a tough one. If you're looking for a lot of compliance and you're particularly hard on wheels and you don't mind spending and servicing wheels, then aluminum also has its benefits. But again, I think it's like the suspension talks. It's not like a black on white thing.
It's not black and white, no, it's fit.
Yeah.
Disc size?
Depends on the strength of the power of the brakes, but yeah, usually 200 front and rear.
Okay.
Sometimes a 220 in the front. I've even played with a 220 in the back as well on some bikes, and there's benefits there. But yeah, I think 200 is pretty easy to sort of live with for an enduro bike.
Couple of things left. Chainring size. On that one bike does everything.
Yeah, with an MX setup, I would say 32, but it depends on what you're doing with the bike. If you are maybe in the bike park more, 34 would definitely be advantageous. But if you're going to take that enduro bike into the backcountry, you're going to have a heavy pack and stuff, then you're probably going to want low gearing. Thankfully, that's something that's pretty easy to tweak. It also has an effect on kinematics and stuff too. So, and I guess a smaller chainring, you're going to spinning more. So if you're hitting your cranks a lot, you push a harder gear, then that might not be a bad thing. Having a bigger ring.
Pedals, flat or clips? Because I've known you and you were riding mostly flat.
Yeah. I still go back and forth a lot. It's like...
You still can decide?
I think clips. Like if I'm going on a trip and I can only bring one pair, I feel pretty comfy everywhere on clips, but flats are just sometimes more fun or more practical if you're doing a lot of hike biking and stuff.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, clips, I think control and just isolation, you just forget about what your feet are doing and they're there. But you definitely got to be comfy if you're getting in like tech terrain with them.
And last thing, tires. Would you go, if you could only have one set of tires, which I know you won't because you probably have all the tires, but would you go like, if we look at the Maxxis catalog, would you go Exo Plus, Double Down? or DH?
If
you have to keep those tires all year long and do everything with them.
For around here?
Yeah.
And you have to ride them all year. I would go Maxxis Assegai, Max Grip, double down in the front, and Maxxis DHR2, double down, Max Terra rear.
Or double down on the back.
Yeah. I think because it's soft enough around here, like it's kind of muddy sometimes. There aren't that many sharp rocks.
Yeah, the rocks are not that. Yeah, it's like reliability in Squamish is usually not too much of an issue.
Yeah.
I mean, actually, there's that new trail that I've ridden a bunch. There is one rock I couldn't see it because the dirt was like so soft.
Yeah.
But there was like I flatted it.
Yeah.
And I was like, I heard the rock.
Yeah.
But then I went to find the rock and to remove it. It was the sharpest rock in Squamish. Like it was like just like a knife.
Did the same thing on like trying to do like a POV on some bike review and just I was like, what? I knew I hit something and I went back to look and I was like, digging, and it was just this jagged point. So it happens, but yeah, I would say the terrain here is more forgiving, even more than like the North Shore.
Yeah. Yeah, the North Shore is definitely. Okay, well, I think that answered pretty much all the questions I had for Matt today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure you subscribe, like it, comment. And okay, let's get some food and we'll ask you some more questions next time.
All right, sounds good. Thanks for having me.